afternoon, everybody. It's a wonderful day for us to meet. Today is the 150th anniversary of Swami Vivekananda, and I thought I should start with a little quotation of his. He says, "All the powers of the universe are already ours. It is we who have put our hands before our eyes and cry that it is dark." I think it is an apt quotation for today's talk. So let me first start by welcoming Colonel Mathew Thomas and Mr. Jude D'souza, who are our speakers today. Colonel Mathew Thomas got 50 years of experience in doing a whole bunch of things. First, of course, for the nation in the army. Then he's a missile scientist turned civic activist. He's been campaigning against database control of people, which is what Aadhar is. And he's a postgraduate in missile technology from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Has over 50 years experience with the Indian Army, with defense research, and in the private sector at top management and board positions. Colonel Thomas has been trained abroad in modern manufacturing technologies. I now hand over the mic to Colonel Thomas.
Right. Now, first of all, welcome to all of you, and that's what's on the slides. Now, this is titled "The Medicine Worse Than the Disease." And we start with a few questions by way of introspection, and this is the theme. The theme is UID is conceptually flawed, it's deceitfully promoted, it's purposelessly pushed, it's dangerously structured, it is illegally and opaquely implemented, and it's ignorantly and surreptitiously applied. So this is basically the theme. Now there are three questions which you could sort of ponder over as we are going on this. One is, why have we titled this presentation in this manner? The second is, do you believe that a national ID card is necessary and or useful for you and for the country? The third one is, why is UID for all residents? I hope you're aware that UID is something which is meant for all residents. Is that, everybody knows that? Fine. We start with the first one, conceptually flawed. Now, the stated original objective or objectives of UID were that the poor lack an ID, an identification or an identity card, and therefore the poor are denied access to welfare because they lack an ID card or identity. And thirdly, that giving the poor people an ID would help prevent leakages from welfare schemes. These are the assumptions on which the UID project was started. Now we'll look and see whether any of these things are true. The second slide on conceptual flaw, the Parliament is not, when I said it's conceptually flawed, it is not I alone who am saying that. The Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance went into this project and they termed it ill-conceived, directionless, and a threat to national security. The committee was chaired by Mr. Yashwant Sinha, and it had 31 members, 16 of whom were from the UPA. It was a near unanimous decision with one dissenting note by the Honorable MP, Mr. Rashid Alvi. All others accepted the findings of the Standing Committee of Parliament on the UIDA project. Now, when I said that the original assumption of the UIDA and the government was the poor lack an identity, we must ask ourselves, what is an ID? And that's a question which we'll possibly answer sometime later. What is an identity? Is it some kind of a biometrics linked to a number, or is it something more? Is there somebody, anyone who has a volunteer who's got an ID card? Can you just take it out and read? You don't have to read the contact details, but just read what are the items there. It would contain your name, your photograph. What else does it contain? Just read it out, sir. Read out what does it contain, the items it contains.
Can you read it?
Yes, Sarah, why don't you read it out? Just don't just read out the details, just items it contains. Name, date of birth.
Address.
Yeah.
Yes, name.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the name and the address basically, and the year of birth,
Yeah.
and the gender.
Give it to this gentleman. And can you locate the person with this identity card somewhere here? Please stand up and look around.
No, I won't know.
You won't know? Anybody else? Can you, sir? Your photograph is there? So it's possible that if you look carefully, you should be able to recognize the person. Right. Now, how does one obtain an ID? The assumption is that the poor do not have an ID. So how does one obtain an ID? Why do poor lack IDs? Who is to give them an ID? Why have those who are responsible to give the poor people an ID not done so? Why is UID required then for giving the ID to the poor? These are some of the questions which we need to ask the people who claim that the poor lack an ID, and therefore the UID has come in to provide that. We have been in the country independent for 60 years, 60 odd years, and therefore we ask this question, why do we need this ID and why are the poor not having this ID? Next, I said this is deceitfully promoted. The reason why I say that is it is promoted as a pro-poor initiative. If that was so, why are they taking yours and my parameters? If it is meant for the poor, then you should only enroll the poor into it. If it's meant for welfare leakages, if I don't want those welfare facilities, then my particulars need not be there. Then they claim that several thousands, this is a claim made by UIDA when it started and by the government. They said thousands of crores of rupees would be saved in LPG and PDS. How, they don't say. Take for example LPG. Now, how many cylinders do you use, madam, in your house?
2.
2 per?
1 per month almost.
1 per month. What about you, sir? You may not know. Your wife would know.
That's right, but it'll be about 9 a year.
About 9 a year. That's high. Usually about 1 to 1.5 months is the time for consumption of a cylinder. About 10 years ago, the oil companies had decided that you cannot book a cylinder before 21 days of the receipt of the previous cylinder. You have a consumer number. Every LPG customer has a consumer number. The oil company has a consumer number against which the consumption is logged. So what's the big deal? Again, if you know, if somebody is consuming 7 or 18 cylinders a month, you know something is wrong. Either he's eating too much or something else is being done to the cylinder. So why do you require your biometrics, a centralized database to do this? And I have been a consultant to some oil companies, and I've asked them this question. They have no answer. Actually, the leakage is not because the domestic consumer is misusing it. Yes, when it started, the auto rickshaws, etc., there was some misuse where an auto rickshaw driver used to book a cylinder and use it. They're no longer. Now there's auto LPG is available. So they don't use that, and it's very clumsy and difficult to fit a domestic cylinder into an auto rickshaw or to a Maruti van. It's difficult. So they use the auto LPG cylinder. So there is no need for this at all. In any case, by cutting down the number of cylinders, they already saved, as today's paper says, 780 crores. So why do you need all this nonsense? So that is why I say it's deceitfully promoted. And I have asked these people, how do you think the biometric ID in a database will prevent the LPG? They have no answer. There's a task force headed by the chairperson of UIDA. He headed the task force on cash transfers, and there are funny statements made. When I asked the question how they will use this for preventing LPG, will you take the fingerprints of the person in whose name the connection is at the time of delivery, they suddenly woke up and realized that it's not possible. All of you know that one of you in the house would have the connection in your name. You can't be at home when the cylinder is delivered. So very interestingly, the task force recommended that all the members of the family fingerprints should be available in the database to deliver cylinder. The children are in school, the husband and wife are working, so what do you do? All right, get the servant's fingerprint in. I mean, this is the ridiculous extent to which they go. And if you really ask the oil companies, the LPG is swiped not by the domestic consumer. It is swiped by the political people and their cronies in business. You must have heard of the person who went to check the siphoning of kerosene from a tanker and who was burnt or killed in Pune, was it? Or in Nasik, yeah. Now, who does that? It is done by some person with political connections. And the swiping is done in bulk. What is done is, against your and my name, they know that, for example, this lady would consume a cylinder in 1.5 months. Now, every 21 days, there will be a cylinder booked against her name. Now, all this is accounted for, and a tanker load is then swiped off. The same goes for fake ration cards or anything else. I have asked the UIDI and the civil supplies departments, how many fake ration cards have you found? Every now and then you will find a paper headline which says 50 lakhs fake ration cards found. Where are these fake ration cards? Who made them? What happened when you found 50 lakhs? Was any action taken? How did you decide it was fake? There is no answer to any of these questions. So these are all nonsensical news which is put. There are fake ration cards, but it is not due to identity. It is due to ineligibility. I'm sure in our names there would be ration cards in some ration shop. If somebody can get hold of your photograph and make a ration card, it can be given to a ration shop. In fact, I used to analyze voter lists, and in one MLA's house in Bangalore, there were 230 voters registered. Right? So similarly for ration cards, I talked at very great length to a deputy director in the civil supplies department at Bangalore, and he told me we are just ordered by a bureaucrat or a politician, just issue ration cards to all these people, and they just go and issue it. Now, last week in Bangalore, they said 50 lakhs of fake ration cards were detected, and they did not know what to do, but then the minister ordered them to issue another 33 lakhs. So what do we do? Now, what I'm trying to say, it's deceit in saying that UID will prevent that. It's absolutely nonsensical, and the person saying it knows it. Then why does he or she say that? I am at a loss to understand. Then the next deceit is in the so-called voluntariness. Very interesting statement made by the chairman himself. He said it's voluntary. But in the same breath, he says it will become ubiquitous. I wonder whether he understood the meaning of the word ubiquitous when he said that. Ubiquitous, maybe he thought it will become common, but actually ubiquitous means present all over at the same time, omnipresent, almost godlike. That's the meaning of ubiquitous. How will a government program meant for the poor become present all over? Unless the government forces it down our throats. Then at the same breath he says enrollment form. The enrollment form asks for ID proof and address proof. Now, if you're giving an identity to those who lack an identity, those who lack access because they lack identity, why are you asking for 14 other identities? It's begging the question. And it's very unfortunate that nobody asked these questions. I went and filmed the activity in, I hope the press is not here, nobody will quote me. I went and filmed an enrollment center. It's unbelievable what goes on there. Unbelievable. Absolutely no control. They're all contract employees of a contractor called an enrolling agency. And they are clueless of what they are doing. They can't capture the fingerprints. They keep on doing that again and again, and then they pass it through. They do not know what they are doing. It's so bad. Anybody, a Pakistani, a Chinese, anybody can come and get himself or herself enrolled. And when some people said that these 14 they can't produce, then they had another system which is known as the introducer system. That means somebody else can introduce a person who doesn't have the 14 IDs. Now that resulted in all kinds of people getting into this UID database. A doctor in Delhi was caught simply dishing out introductions for a fee of 100 rupees. There were a lot of politicians doing that. So where is the sanctity of this unique ID which will detect the fakes and so on? Then the brand name Aadhar. That's interesting, Aadhar, foundation. And you know this brand name is it's a coincidence perhaps. They had a competition to get the name, a brand name suggested. First of all, why does a welfare scheme need a brand name? Brand name is for commercial products and services and not for welfare activities. Now, this brand name, when they asked for the competition, one gentleman happened to suggest this name and it was obviously chosen. The brand name happens to be the brand name of a trust owned by Mr. Nandan Nilankani. I'll leave it at that and you can guess why it is so. Then while he says it's voluntary, the deceit is in saying service providers may ask for it. How can one office of the government say something is voluntary and another office of the same government say, no, you have to provide it? And what's the meaning of voluntary? Isn't that deceitful? That's why I call it deceitfully promoted. And then this brand name. There is a portal in the UID website which asks for application development. It's terrible. They spend public money, they gather the data of people, set it up in a database and exploit it commercially. If it's linked to your income data, then it will be useful for Walmart to decide where to put their next supermarket. And UIDA can charge them a fee for giving them that information. In other words, the database is set up with taxpayers' money and can be commercially exploited. I have mentioned all this. Now we talk of why it is purposelessly pushed. Now it started off with a few ideas of welfare schemes, etc. And now there's a functionality creep. They say you can use it for KYC norms for banks, you can use it for passports, and today's paper says it can be used for train tickets. What are they up to? When you launch a project, you decide in advance what you don't want to do with it. You don't you launch a project and say, okay, as we go along, we'll find something for it. That's a ridiculous way of doing any business. Now, this is something which I think every one of you must know. Why is it dangerously structured? First of all, there is use of private foreign companies with links to intelligence agencies. If you read that monograph which I produced, you have a lot of information there as to which are the companies involved. I must mention one of them, which is called L1ID Solutions. Now this was a company which came out of the merger of two US companies. One was called Visage and the other one was called, I forget the name. The other one was called Identics. The two companies were merged. Now Visage was a company which had a contract for driving licenses in the state of Georgia in the United States. They defaulted on the contract was terminated, and they suddenly went into a spin. Then they fudged their balance sheets, and the SEC were investigating them. At that time, a few officials from the CIA and FBI took it over, merged it with this Identics, and called it L1 Identity Solutions, and then they got a lot of US government contracts. Now, the next thing which they did was they merged it with a company in France called Safran, but they still have operations in the United States. They operate from the United States. Now the contract of UID is given to Satyam collaboration with Safran. Satyam Mahindra Morpho is the name, and L1 Identity Solution is now called Morpho Trust. And both Satyam Mahindra Morpho and Morpho Trust, erstwhile L1 Identity Solutions, are both subsidiaries of Safran company in biometrics field, of intelligence and biometrics field of France. Now that is the company which is providing all the biometric technology, equipment, etc. to India. First of all, it has two subsidiaries competing for the same product, so which is against all procurement norms. Secondly, these are foreign companies. In other words, the entire database of this country would be available to these foreign companies with links to intelligence agencies abroad. They are defense contractors of USA and many other countries. They are also providing the same service to NADRA, which is a Pakistani national identity database. So you can imagine what will happen. It's a great security risk. Under RTI, I asked the UIDA for copies of this contract. In fact, what we did is 3 of us asked this. The first person was told that they have signed a non-disclosure agreement with these companies and therefore they cannot provide it. Another friend of mine, when he asked it, he said that you can come and inspect the file in Delhi. And when I asked them, they first said that under Section 8(1)(d) of the RTI Act, that is the information related to trade secrets, it cannot be provided. And then I appealed against that and said that, look, the contract is over, so competitiveness of these companies will not be affected if you disclose the contract. Then they said, no, we can't give you that still. They quoted the same thing. Then I said that, look, under the RTI Act, any information which is to be disclosed to Parliament should be available to the public. And since the money is paid out of the public funds, you have to disclose it to Parliament, and therefore you should give me that. They have refused it, so my appeal is with CIC. CIC has got, I think, 20,000 or 26,000 pending cases, so I do not know when my number will come. Meanwhile, I have written to a large number of MPs to ask for the copies of these contracts to be placed on the table of the House. The MPs are also silent. The leader of the opposition acknowledged my letter and said it is receiving attention. At least I am grateful to him for that. The others have all kept quiet. I have written to all the chief ministers to tell their MPs to ask for this. Yeah, there's another system in this dangerous structure which is known as the empaneled enrolling agency. UIDA called for this empaneled enrolling agencies, and they empaneled them. And they have a system of registrars. You must understand, the registrar is different from the enrolling agency. The registrar is a government entity, SBI, the Center for E-Governance of State Government, LIC and so on. These are registrars. The registrars choose the enrolling agency from, initially there were 209, that list keeps varying. It's like a revolving door. Firms go in and out of that enrolling agency panel. And there are all kinds of dubious firms there. There are 3 firms with the same address. And one of them was caught in Bangalore with around 1,000 fake IDs, having franchised the entire contract to another company, which is also some kind of a dubious company. And under the rules, they are not supposed to franchise. And this was not caught by any government agency or by the UID. They did not even know this is going on. The franchisee was charging 2.5 lakhs for giving these subcontracts. To one of the persons who came later, they charged 5 or 7 lakhs. Now that guy said, why are you giving him for 2.5 lakhs and not giving me the same, giving to me for a higher amount? So that guy who was upset then went and complained to the UID office. Then only these fellows complained to the police, raided them and caught it. Now if one person has been caught, and they found the logos, the printing machines and 1,000 fake IDs at that spot. In Mysore, the company which I told you, which I saw, that company was, there was an auto rickshaw driver who was taking some amount of money and providing fake IDs or IDs to various people. Now that was caught in a sting operation by a TV channel. Then I wrote to the Secretary for E-Governance, and after about 2 months of pestering, they filed an FIR and they took action against the auto driver and not against the enrolling agency. The enrolling agency is a defaulting company. In a press statement released last week, the Minister for Civil Supplies in Karnataka made a statement that we are in this mess of fake ration cards because of that particular company. The name of the company is called Comat Technologies. And one of the directors of Comat Technologies also, I think, I may be wrong, but I think is also a director on eGov Foundation, which belongs to the chairperson of UIDA. And this company, under a CAG audit, owes the government 55 crores because they were given the contract for preparing the ration card database. They did not give the database to the government. They enrolled people, but did not hand over the database to the government. And according to the CAG, they were paid 55 crores, which the company is to return. Now that company is an enrolling agency. Now, the sting operation revealed that a person who was in jail, one Mr. Ali, a terrorist, his ID was generated by this company. Mr. Nandan Nilankani's ID was also generated by the company. It shows the ridiculous extent to which this process is working. So when I say it's dangerously structured, it's unbelievable. And the press keeps quiet, everybody keeps quiet. The government, I have a spate of correspondence between the Secretary of E-Governance and me, and all kinds of nonsensical words. Oh, we filed the FIR. You ask the police station, it's under investigation. Last year, 2 years ago, nothing has happened. Nobody knows. If the press goes and asks them, they don't give any information. So what is it that we are doing? Introduce a method, I think I've told you. Now, illegal implementation. Now, you see, the UID and government recognize the need for a law for implementing such a program. Hence, they brought a bill called the National Identification Authority of India Bill in the year 2010. The bill was referred to the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance, and the committee went through it. They invited a lot of suggestions. I'm one of the people who gave them a lot of suggestions, etc. In fact, my suggestion without my name, because by then I had filed a case against this scheme in Bangalore, so my name doesn't figure there, but they took in my idea and it is available in the report. I said the leakage in any welfare scheme is not due to lack of identity or fake identities, it is discretion to decide eligibility. That is the reason, and that discretion still exists. A person who is ineligible can be given the welfare benefit if there is unquestioned discretion to decide, like an MP or a bureaucrat can say, just give him the benefit, that's end of it. Now, that bill was rejected, yet they continue to implement it. The recommendations of the standing committee have not been placed before Parliament. It came for a short while in the public, in the media it was published. After that, everything is quiet and nothing is known what's happening to it. There is no bill coming, but they continue to implement it. Interestingly, the Attorney General gave an opinion that under Article 73 of the Constitution of India, that the powers of the executive are coextensive with that of the legislature. But if you read the proviso to that article, it will make it clear that anything on which a state can legislate, then the central executive does not have that power to go ahead and act. That proviso was omitted by the Attorney General. The Standing Committee of Parliament disagreed with it but did not give reasons. The Law Ministry has now rejected the Attorney General's opinion, yet knowing that it is illegal, they continue to implement it. Here is a government which talks by the sanctity of Parliament, ignores the Parliamentary Standing Committee's recommendations, ignores its own Law Ministry's opinion, and continues to implement a very diabolical scheme. And every one of us are quite happy with this situation. Now I come to the last part, ignorantly applied. Now this is the main purpose of this meeting. As customers of bank, we must understand what they are planning to do. Now, having launched this UID without a concept or study, the idea now seems to be, let's set up such a database and we'll find numerous uses for it. Let's do it quickly before resistance or fall of government. That should be all. Fall or fall instead of off fall. Sorry. So now they are linking it to the KYC norms. Now why are they doing it? They say they want to do cash transfer. Now what happens when you link this to your bank? Now my son-in-law, in spite of my advice, went and enrolled himself in the UID. Now there's a column which you fill up and you have to tick off whether you want the UID to link it to your bank account or not. So he, because I'd warned him, he said no. But when he got the acknowledgement, he found it is linked. So what do you do? Now what happens when you link your UID number to your bank account? Anybody would like to have a guess how dangerous that is? I think after you see Jude's demo, then you'll understand what it is. I only speak. There's a famous management saying, which, how many more minutes do I have, Suchata? Pardon? I have 10. Thank you. 10 minutes? Okay. So, there's a famous management saying, if you can't do, then you inspect. If you can't inspect, you teach. And when you're incapable of even teaching, then you become a consultant. So I am well on the way between the two, but my friend here, Jude, is the person who does it. So when he does this demo, you will realize how dangerous it can be if you link your biometrics and hand it over to somebody and link this UID number to your database. Now, essentially what happens is this. You don't want cash transfer to your bank account. First of all, today, to do cash transfers, you don't need a UID at all. How many of you do internet banking? How many of you do mobile banking? There. So, phone banking. You can do all these methods. Why do you need UID linked to your bank? Now, when you do any of these things, there are only two parties to the transaction, the bank and you. When you use your card or whatever it is, there are only two parties, the bank and you. And you can go to your bank and ask them, hey, I entered this, here is my screen print of my debit or credit, and why is it you're given something else in my account? Now, the moment you link it this UID, its database, you are introducing a third party into the transaction. That is the person who controls the database. And we do not know who that person is. Whom will you complain to? If your bank account is hacked, the bank will say, sorry, I don't know. Somebody put his fingerprint somewhere and swiped your money. As far as we know, that fingerprint was recognized by the UID database and they identified it as you. Finished. Whom will you complain to? That is why this law should create liability. Unfortunately, the draft bill which they came out with, there's no liability at all. In fact, even if you, under the draft bill, even if you complain, they can decide whether to take up the complaint or not. It's a draconian bill which they brought out. In fact, that bill had a provision, they can declare you dead. Yeah. In other words, you're non-existent. If you don't use your UID number for, say, 3 years, in the bill it said, they can declare you non-existent. Now, if you can declare a person non-existent after 3 years, you can certainly declare him non-existent after 3 days, because it's only a software button to be pressed by some controller somewhere, God knows. The control passes out of your life from yourself to somebody controlling that database. Who is this somebody? That is the question which you need to ask yourself. Who is the third party added? That is the question. Now, we talked about the poor, right? This is a picture I took just before I came, and this is a picture you'll find in many places. This is a construction site in near my house. You see those blue tarpaulins? There are human beings living there. It's not just a row of huts. Now these are the people to whom UID claims they'll give an identity. How will they give them an identity? First of all, you can't even capture their fingerprints. They're all worn out. And what will they do with an identity? Do they need a home or do they need an identity? What should the government do? And why are they talking of these ridiculous things? I just fail to understand. This is a construction site that is the BBMP's what do you call hoarding, which says that this construction is by them. And there is a rule that construction workers are to be provided a shelter, they are to be provided a creche if women are working there, they are to be provided some education facilities. All these are in the rules. And we are trying to spend thousands of crores to provide an identity to people like this. They're all migrant workers. In fact, the large number of workers working in the solid waste management under horrible mafia contractors of every municipality in this country are migrant workers. I don't know whether you've seen them traveling in those trucks carrying this waste. How can a human being travel in those trucks? With bare hands, without shoes. They gather the muck which you and I throw, and we'll give them an identity. This is a picture of rotting food. Around 80,000 crores worth of rotting food rots in this country every year. And the Supreme Court directed, I think in 2009 or 10, the government to distribute this food. Our Prime Minister said at that time, I think Justice Kapadi had just taken over as Chief Justice, and he had made a statement in one of the cases that you cannot question a policy, the courts cannot question policy decisions. So immediately the Prime Minister took that cue, and when the court ordered the government to distribute the food which is rotting, in a bill filed by Harsh Mandir on the Right to Food Act, the court asked the government, why don't you distribute the food? And then the government, the Prime Minister replied saying, we can't distribute it, it's a policy decision. The court kept quiet. And this is not going on for 1 or 2 years, for the last 20 years. And very interestingly, the government says they don't have storage. So the Civil Supplies Department came out with an idea. They should privatize storages, and a lot of storages are private, and we should give them more rent, and then we should give them what you call longer lease, so that the food doesn't rot. Now, your priority, is it to provide homes, means of living, and storage for food, or is it to give an identity? Isn't this a leakage or not? PDS grains, you see, it's very interesting what happens. Now, the food is stored outside, and let us say the Civil Supplies Department says 10,000 tons is rotten. Who decides whether 10,000 or 3,000 or 5,000 or 30,000? Nobody knows. You can just not know. That is where the leakage is. When at the procurement, say 5,000 tons is diverted somewhere, from the storage account you write off 5,000 tons. Simple. It is not your fingerprint or an ID which will establish it. And you don't require rocket science to understand that this is how the black marketing goes on. In other words, I often use this phrase whenever I talk. The fence is eating the corn, and the fence says, let's brand the cattle to find out where the corn is going. It's a case of the fence eating the corn. And what we are doing actually is, we are giving a tool into the hands of the thieves to control us. And this is a horrible tool. I've asked these questions, so we'll go on to the next slide. Creeping functionality. Now, creeping functionality has a cost. The moment you add bank accounts, every bank must have a scanner. That must have connectivity to the UID database. There must be somebody who will maintain that. There must be a replacement because bank activity cannot be stopped. All this costs money. So the original concept, I'll provide it to 300 million people who are under the PDS scheme, is gone. Now it is 1.2 billion people, and every bank. Every ticket examiner must have a scanner in every train. So as the functionality keeps on creeping, the cost will keep on going up, and nobody knows that cost. It's unknown. Now, it's all nice to hear all this on a Saturday afternoon, clap our hands, have a cup of tea and go. My request to you, ladies and gentlemen, is that you must act if you feel that this is dangerous for you and for our children and for our nation. So what I would suggest is, get acquainted with all this, read about this, and then get involved with groups who are working on this. I'm so thankful to Moneylife Foundation and their website for sponsoring this and airing all this news. There are several sites and several groups of people here in Mumbai, in Delhi, in Bangalore, and Calcutta and so on, working on this. So I would request all of you to spread this word around, join these groups, and take action. Unite and let's achieve the goal of stopping this nonsense. What you could do is talk about UID at every opportunity. Convince people. First of all, once you're familiar, then you know what is to be talked. Motivate, plan, and then act. Contribute working from home or office. Use social media. You will be blocked in the mainstream media. They are under pressure. They are muzzled. Every time mainstream media tries to put out some adverse thing on this, a call will come from somewhere and they are told not to do it. And there's tremendous foreign pressure for this. As I told you, there are foreign agencies at work. They are pressurized. I mean, I'm not talking of conspiracy theory. But you can just ask anybody, who are the companies behind this? And you will, from the facial expression, you will know the answer. Lobby your MP and MLA, just as I have been writing to MPs, chief ministers, please do that. Write your MLA, write your MP. Many of them are involved in this. In fact, when I told about the tele firm, 3 firms in one address and one of them caught, the other 2 still continuing, they all belong to or have some links with a major political party. Actively engage with media persons, wherever you come across a media person, your neighbor or anybody, bosses who are involved in this or providing services, clubs, when you meet here, talk about this, civil society organization, wherever you can, talk UID, 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 and stop it. Now we come back to the three questions. Why this title? The title was Medicine Worse Than the Disease. Would you like to guess why this title? What is the disease? What was the aim of UID? Corruption. It was to prevent corruption, leakages, and give the poor the welfare benefits. Welfare benefits leaking. What is the medicine? You are giving a tool into the hands of those who are the corrupt people. How will it work? Medicine is, and the medicine has got other repercussions. The side effects or actual effects are far more serious. Then why a national ID card? Everybody thinks we must have a national ID card, right? Most people will think so. Can anybody tell me why do you need a national ID card? How is it useful? In what way? To say I'm an Indian? Am I right? You want to say you are an Indian? Wonderful, wonderful. Excellent, sir. What happens when that one thing is lost? Everything is gone.
Nothing is lost. Number is there. Number exists somewhere in the software.
No, sir. No, just one. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you. The gentleman there says that there is a number somewhere. Would you know, sir, where is that number?
It is in the Government of India's database.
Oh, Government of India's database. And who authenticates that number and your fingerprints?
We can write on that.
No.
We can do that, but basic.
How do you improve?
It exists everywhere.
Excellent.
There is the purpose. You have to give. There is a question, sir.
Yeah.
At the back of your slide, you are told that you want to identify the poorest of your home.
No, let me answer the question of this gentleman if you don't. We'll have questions later.
Yes, sir.
If you don't mind, sir.
Picture. You want to identify precisely the people whom you want to provide home.
Yeah.
Do you know who those people are?
Yeah.
To identify them and where to reach them.
Right.
If there is a solution to it,
Yeah.
UID is not the solution. What it will be? We have been struggling for 60 years
Wow.
just to find out who those who are.
Right.
And we don't have a clue today.
Yeah. How do they do
Sir,
it?
we can leave him to answer the question if you don't mind. You asked it.
I'll answer both your questions. The question of the first gentleman is, first of all, when you must understand biometrics. Biometrics is fallible. In fact, I suggest please note down, there is an article published in The Economist, 1st October 2010. It starts with the statement, thanks to gangster movies, spy thrillers, and so on, people have somehow other come to think that biometrics is some fancy tool which is infallible. The people who know this technology do not claim that, nor is it so. In other words, if you take your fingerprints, there is an error rate. So it is impossible to detect that. There is a lobby at work which sells the equipment and the technology. And the companies who sell that, I named one of them, L1 Identity Solutions. Okay. And the Visage was another company. These companies claim they have facial recognition technology. And all that failed. Right? Fingerprints at best is corroborative evidence in a court of law. If a murder takes place here and my fingerprints are here, if I don't have an alibi that I was not here at the time the murder took place, if I have a motivation to have killed the victim, then my fingerprints corroborates those two. That's all. Now if my fingerprints is available in a database, as Jude will show you, anybody can take my fingerprint and put it onto the weapon. It will strike at the entire system of jurisprudence. In fact, there is the case of the Madrid bomber. The train in Madrid was bombed, And from the FBI's database, they found the guy in California. They arrested him. And as they investigated, they found he was a poor guy who never left California in his life. Months later, the real bomber was located in Madrid. And that's from the FBI's database. Now, there's a whole lot of scientific literature available on biometrics. As the database increases, as the methods of capture increase, the error rates increase exponentially. UIDA's own biometric standards committee says the error could be 15%, 1-5. Yeah, their standards committee. What is 15% of the Indian's population? What happens when you put your fingerprints on a scanner? The scanner says, no, you are not you. What do? You can't transact anything. Whom do you go to? The control passes away from you into a system which is impersonal. And that's the danger.
But can it happen? When a fingerprint is taken,
Yeah.
and then the scanner is saved,
Yeah.
it happens that you said you are not true.
Yes, sir.
It cannot happen.
I'll answer the questions later. Yeah, I'll do one thing. I'll quickly, we'll give you plenty of time to answer. I am willing to sit here till midnight to answer your questions. Okay. Now, we need to do the demo. I'll quickly go to another 2 or 3 slides. The other question I asked is, why is it for all residents? I'll come back to that. It'll take a long time to answer that question, so I'll come back to that. Why is it all for all residents? There is a history of this which I can talk to you later. For shortage of time, I won't. Originally, the Citizenship Act was amended because the then government thought the unique identity system, national population register, would eliminate illegal immigrants. UIDA is made for all residents, not for citizens, because your biometrics does not decide whether you are a citizen or not. Something else decides you are a citizen. I was a citizen of this country before Manmohan Singh and Advani. So I was born here. Both of them were born in Pakistan. Right? So it is ridiculous for their governments to take my fingerprints and decide whether I am an Indian or not. I risked my life for this country. So I feel emotionally upset when somebody talks of this ridiculous system. So anyway, that is why UIDA is for all residents and not for citizens. And when they say they'll merge it with NPR, which is only for citizens. 600 million will be UID. You do not know whether they are residents or citizens. 600 million will be NPR, they are citizens. Who is to decide? You see the ridiculousness of the system. Let me go to the next one. Now this is something which will let you know about the national ID card. The UK scrapped it in June 2009. And this is what the Home Secretary, equivalent to our Home Minister, Theresa May, had to say. She called it the national ID card system the worst of government. Intrusive bullying, an assault on personal liberty. We propose to do government business as servants of the people, not your master, not their masters. The moment you give a national ID card, they are the masters. They question you. They are the people who give you that. And who are these people? Almost 25% of them are convicted criminals. Questions later. Thank you so much. I'll answer all your questions. Jude will now give the demo and give everything. Thank you very much.
Jude Terrence D'souza studied at St. Xavier's Institute of Technology in Mahim in 1980. He has 32 years experience in design and development of microprocessor-based embedded electronic systems. He's been trained at Canon in Japan on design of computerized test systems for facsimiles and photocopies, and has designed a fully indigenous multifunction business machine. He designs hardware and software for digital RF communications, electronic security systems, GPS vehicle tracking systems, biometric access control systems. So he's walked the talk and he knows what he's talking about.
It is an optical sensor, very similar to the type being used by the UID AI. This is a single fingerprint, single finger capture. The UID AI uses multi-fingers, but for authentication purposes, they will be using something absolutely similar like this one. So it has two LEDs here. The red one means no go, and blue will mean pass. So you saw that blue light flashing. That's my finger, which I have registered. The other finger I have not registered. You can see the red flashing, not registered.
The fingerprints are taken and registered on the scanner. In fact, here it's only on the scanner. In the UID system, the scanner is connected to the database. So when you place your fingerprint on the scanner, an image is sent to the database. Then it checks whether this particular image which is on the scanner is there in the database. So here what's being done is, the fingerprint is in the scanner. The image is there. So you're taking a plastic, the person is not there. That plastic is being put on the scanner, and if it turns blue, it is recognizing that this fingerprint is registered in the scanner. Now this has implications on the manner in which the data is being collected. The data is being collected by employees of an agency. Now it's in their scanner. It is taken then into thumb drives and sent to the UID center. Any number of copies of this can be made. How do you know what's going on? It is leaking. It's leaking like a sieve. I asked in RTI to the UID, while he gets it ready, let me just tell you, they went all around 200-300 million people. So I have asked the UID, how many duplicates have you found? How many fakes have you found? There is no response. They do not know. There is no answer at all. I have asked them that if it has been used for identifying fake ration cards, neither the Civil Supplies Department nor UIDA is able to say whether through this fingerprint system any fakes have been identified. I have asked for the data on the pilot studies done by the oil companies at Mysore. The oil companies say that the studies are incomplete. UIDA has not replied. The Ministry of Petroleum says they do not know.
So, can you just focus again? So, can you see that blue light? Yeah. Okay.
Now Jude mentioned that when you capture the fingerprints and when you want to authenticate it later, you must keep the fingers in the same manner as you kept it when you originally registered. If you move the fingers this way or that, it will not authenticate. There are immense difficulties in this system.
You can see this white.
That is called.
Can you see this fevicol?
Fevicol is kept on his finger. Fevicol is somebody else's.
The fevicol data I can you see the fevicol, please? Yeah, that was the print which was authenticated just now. So although this particular person is not present here, it has given a signal that this person is present here.